Peace and blessings, Asapo, the Honorable One, Hakisha Kwame here. The name of this piece is how uh, European colleges have underdeveloped Sarah Suit Seti and Dr. Umar Johnson. Now, I know that this will sound kind of a little strange to many of you, but bear with me as I attempt to go through what I have seen through observation as well as my own research into the matter. Um, you know, on some levels, just with me and my evolution and how my independent education, some college and rather independent studies and attending lectures and conferences, uh, but more so, the independent reading has caused me to grow at a different pace of development than, say, individuals, black males that are on a college campus. Now, what I mean by that, Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, he used the term how in his book, Black College Survival Handbook, how many African American students that go through the college process, how they begin, what he used the term majoring in sex and minoring in alcohol and drugs. Now, I went straight into the military, went straight into the Navy. But, I became conscious, right? Right down in Norfolk, Virginia. I was, you know, that bookstore, what was it called at that time? Consciousness, House of Consciousness. Um, um, uh, and I was reading the books, the Akbars and Amos, well, not Amos Wilson at that time, but yeah, maybe some Amos Wilson's mid 90s. Um, Welsing Isis papers, and I was listening to cassette tape lectures of different individuals. And so, I developed a reading discipline, an appreciation for knowledge. And as I was becoming conscious about the different forces that are out here that are causing black men to have black male adolescent syndrome, where black men do not necessarily develop themselves. How black men are staying in a constant state of psychological childishness, like Dr. Welsing talk about the baby, who's the baby boy, who's the MFer, the who's the bitch. She used the term, the original MFer, just those types of breakdown. Well, who's the baby and where does the black man stay at a crib? So when I went to, I was up, at Hampton most of the time, a lot of time, and these were like around the same ages as me. I was just like, hmm, these young men are walking around on campus smoking weed. It was weed at that time, not blunts. It was little weed. People didn't smoke the big old, put a $10 bag of weed or $20 bag of weed in a whole blunt like they do now and smoke 2 or 3 of them a day. It's just ridiculous. So, uh, so I used to see this on campus, and then sometimes, yes, I still went to clubs, and some of the Hampton women. Actually, the woman I went to the prom with in Baltimore, she actually went to Hampton, so I was like on campus a whole lot, and so through my reading, of course, I kept books with me through my transformation, but I still was, kind of in the streets partially and knew street people, but I was growing, I was getting knowledge. So that's what I saw and what I read from Dr. Kunjufu. And some things I saw, for instance, even in the Maryland area, for instance, how, Morgan State, for instance, had Lil Wayne come and speak on the campus, but, perform on the campus, but they had a beef, about Farrakhan coming to the campus. So, I've seen some different things in terms of, just the whole fraternity, sororities, and just the childhood, like, juvenile manner where they still do not necessarily grow into real men. There's no masculine, type of manhood training. Some serious scholars. For instance, two quick things. Brother Baruti, who Mwali Mu Baruti, he's the author of the feminization and the homosexualization of African male, former Morehouse professor. And I had a conversation with him. Yes, I actually stayed at his house, thank him. And, I had a conversation with him some years ago. Man, sometimes, getting these intimate conversations with these scholars, are quite valuable. Now, uh, he mentioned, just the culture that was on Morehouse, and as well as in his book, he mentioned the culture and some things he didn't publish in his book. Some of the stories that he had about the college campus, how it's like a 13th grade on some levels. And so, as I look at, the development, my personal evolution, my personal transformation, and my structure was a little different than theirs. Again, I had to have some rules, about what I do, but also I learned values and ethics, about, consciousness, so my studies come from consciousness, studying the history of our people, studying what real black men and what black women do. And so I was able to actually grow at a different, unique pace than, say, to be influenced into the culture, and how, these colleges, actually take black men and kind of feminize them. Not saying that these two brothers are of that experience, but they still, even through all the knowledge, they still haven't reached a point. And sometimes I would talk to my good friend, a sister down in Dallas, about Seti, who she admired him, loved him, and I went to see him in D.C. and I was just like, he said something about smoking something, and I was like, man, what? Like, what? I'm not gonna be around Negroes just smoking weed and drinking. Like, really? Come on, man. I'm a civilized man. Like, we don't take poisons that, our adversary have used against us, to destroy ourselves, huh? No, no, no. We need clear thinking. If, like Dr. Khaled said, if smoking weed would have got us free, if smoking weed would have got us free, all the weed that many of us smoke, we would have been free by now. So I'm saying that, for those that are out here that are part of that culture, that degenerate, childlike culture that's put in place by some of this rap music, and that culture, and shout out to the brothers in PKV and Jeannie. Yes, I know I say not so pleasant things about Jeannie, but I mean, from what he stood for at a particular time, and and he may still stand for some of those things, but I learned, manhood, what consciousness, what decency was real black nationalism actually mean. So I'm saying that, we gotta we gotta stop pretending that black men going to these institutions of higher education, that they are becoming real men. Like that, like there's a plan, and many of us know about the boule. So I'm simply saying, and I don't want people to get anything I say twisted, but I mean, we got to find, and if I said some things disrespectful, I never like took things to extremes. I never called people ends and MFers, or we gonna fight, like, really. Nah, man, it ain't, nothing is never that serious, first and foremost. I mean, like, between us as a people, like, unless you robbing me, selling drugs. I mean, well, some people sell drugs to get the chemic, but that's a different conversation. But if you're not, truly committing acts of treason, on our people, we need to have good judgment in terms of how we communicate myself to each other. And so I just want to say that I believe again that these college campuses are creating environments where black men are not growing to their full potential. And I believe, because sometimes I would just look at Seti and I'll just be like, why does he talk like that? We're about the same age, and why does he sound like that with the books? And my uncle, I've been studying this and studying that, and I'm just like, you know, and that's what I see. He missed some pieces there, on a college campus, being probably caught up in that environment, that Lil Wayne hip hop environment. Um, and not listening to people, not listening to, for instance, how I had to listen and learn from the brothers in PKV and Baruti. So I'm saying that my evolution took a different form, and what I know about hip hop culture, and Brother Kush does a very good job in his DVD, Black Manhood, and then he does one on man, I can't remember, something about hip hop. But so my orientation as the success scholar and knowledge is different than y'all's, because many of you, if you don't know people, you just see them on YouTube, you just run with it, you run with what they say. And if I say something about hip hop and those that control hip hop, that many you won't hear from Hidden Colors. No, you won't hear it from Hidden Colors. You won't hear the breakdowns of the whole hip hop industry and who controls it and why. You won't hear that. You haven't heard it, but Brother Genie knows, and the PKV brothers and sisters know. Just about how that actually has affected the minds of millions of our people, and that's where we're taking our cues, many of us, from the New York culture that's run by particular ethnic, I'm sorry, ethnic subgroups up there, if you know what I'm saying. But so we need to be very careful, of course, in terms of the emasculation of the black man. We need to be very careful in, the black male adolescent syndrome. We need to be very careful about uh, how we just continue to allow for our men to not act like real men, and it's just really a shameful dynamic. But I'm gonna call it where it started, where it was allowed to go on, and a lack of maturity, you know, has really, there's been a break. And unfortunately, many of these young speakers, they haven't studied, enough. They haven't sat with enough elders and go through a developmental rites or developmental process. And this is why you have people uh, saying F the elders, and things like that. So that's all I have to say. Pardon self, but we must do better. We must make the right decisions, and the right uh, consciousness must develop within us. And so how does that happen? I mean, I can only speak from what it happened for me, and that's through reading and studying and connecting to different people through lectures. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. Peace.